Hi, this episode of Snapshots of the Fool explores the Fool card from the Animal Totem Tarot by artist Eugene Smith and author Leeza Robertson. This is another Rider-Waite-Smith influenced deck from the same duo who gave us the Mermaid Tarot. I fully expected this card was going to be a fun ride down some twisty rabbit holes, and I wasn't disappointed. This representation of the Fool card proved far more challenging than I'd anticipated because so much symbology is either missing or hidden. On the surface, the artwork made the Fool card easy to interpret, so it's a useful guide for reading, but I sensed the simplicity hinted at something deeper. I was going to have to work with this card and not jump to obvious conclusions. This is a very clever snapshot that earned my respect. To understand this Fool, we should remember that tarot cards, especially the major arcana, can have multiple rich and layered interpretations. We decided to demonstrate this in action, offering 5 different perspectives on the Animal Totem Tarot Fool. Readers can interpret the same card in different ways depending on the context and the card details that catch their attention on a different day. There will be many other stories than the ones I've found, and yours are just as valid as mine. I love the idea of companions sharing my Fool's journey, so I hope you'll stay watching to the end and share your story ideas in the comments below. The only sentient character in the Fool card is the grasshopper, which is drawn still ascending in its leap and heading towards the edge of the card. It's not clear whether the grasshopper began its catapult off the staff or from the grass. The grasshopper's leap is with intent. It's heading somewhere specific, past the end of the staff towards the boundary of the card. As grasshoppers can only jump forwards, once committed, its flight path is locked. The risk is whatever's waiting over the edge, still in the unknown. Symbology is important to unlocking the meaning of any tarot card. The grasshopper's colouring and physical features are normal for this insect, except for the eye, which is blue, sometimes appearing purple. A blue eye is quite natural for a human, but not a grasshopper. A strong hint that there's more to this creature than just a little brown grasshopper on a sunny day. Grasshopper is a term for a young apprentice that became popular with a TV show Kung Fu. It refers to someone starting out on life's journey and discovering what's around them. This, the blue eyes, and the general leap of faith meaning associated with grasshopper suggests the grasshopper is the Fool. But where are the Fool's companions or guides? The staff may be a supportive friend, lying on the ground and serving as the launch pad or surrogate precipice. The red bag may also symbolize a companion. The bag's tie has crawled onto the staff and flaps up and down as if to warn the Fool about the risk of launching into space with little control, leaving everyone and everything behind. Ignoring advice and taking off anyway heralds the start of a great personal adventure for the Fool, who displays self-confidence, perhaps arrogance, and possibly some misplaced trust. Whether their action is based on reason or folly, this Fool takes a leap of faith because they believe they are good to go. This first story ticked a lot of boxes for me in reading the Fool card. But should I think of this card as a simple metaphor or as an analogy? Do we miss something in anthropomorphizing human views of the world onto this grasshopper, whose real purpose we can't possibly know? As I understand it, the animal in the Animal Totem Tarot deck is intended to represent itself in their natural environment, not an animal masquerading as a human. Perhaps the grasshopper is the spirit guide or companion and not the Fool. Let's face it, there's no way the grasshopper can use the staff and bag for anything but a launch pad, as they're way too big for an insect and they obviously belong to humans. So where is the fool? There are not many familiar Rider-Waite-Smith symbols in this full card. It's a nice day and the sun is approximately an hour from midday. The full staff and bag are present and lying seemingly unattended on the short grass. The bag is red, so perhaps this replaces the red feather we sometimes see in the fool's hat, representing identity and ego. The end of the red tie from the bag is loose and flicking up, so again this might represent the feather moving in the breeze. However, neither the grass nor the grasshopper's antennae appear ruffled by the wind, so I parked that idea for now and carried on. I considered whether the human fool had put down their belongings, transformed into a grasshopper, and catapulted off the end of the staff. However, transformation isn't a meaning associated with grasshoppers, so I left that line of thought and returned to the scene. And this is where it gets dark for a little while, so just bear with it. I looked at the bag and staff lying unattended, perhaps abandoned, with the fool nowhere in sight. Unfortunately, this is a common sight, especially when humans move to new adventures without finishing the previous one. Seeing the fool's belongings lying in the grass reminded me of discarded rubbish, dumped without consideration as human fools wander off to start something new. Our discarded treasures left lying behind to turn into trash. I thought about the future. The wooden staff would eventually decay and return to the soil, and the bag might too, although the dye and contents of the bag might have left some toxic residues that weren't so easily absorbed by the ecosystem. Perhaps this fool had turned their back on the past and everything they'd claimed to value, leaving nature to cope as best it can under the relentless sun of global warming. I saw the grasshopper leaving the scene as though abandoning the world, heading for the nowhere of extinction, while the fool headed away looking for some other exciting planet to possess and outgrow when they got bored again, or worse. The fool is generally associated with new beginnings. However, the card doesn't have a specific position in the major arcana. It can make sense to place it at the start, but it can just as easily fit elsewhere. And another common position is almost at the end, just before the World card. Is this the fool that loses everything just as they near the end of the journey? This really was an unpleasant thought story, and the worst of it was it's all too familiar and scarily real. It's the risk that we face everywhere that judges the human race as a parasitic pack of fools out of sync with the world we imagine we own until it's too late. Fortunately, Dr. T came to the rescue and pointed out the grass was short and green. This meant the fool's bag and staff hadn't been lying there very long, and the green showed it's likely there was recent rain. It's the kind of lovely day that inspired happy memories of childhood summers and grasshoppers landing on my warm kid legs. Staying locked in a dark story didn't resonate with the card, and it was a relief to let that one go. Still, climate risk is real and relevant, whether we're exploring the positive or negative sides of life on Earth, and it's a risk worthy of any fool's journey. I was happy to search for a brighter fool's story. The tip of the staff is pointed towards the right side of the card, in the same direction that the grasshopper is leaping. This suggested to me that the fool may have been travelling in the opposite direction, carrying the staff over their shoulder with the bag hanging behind them, a traditional Rider-Waite-Smith depiction. However, this fool has stopped and placed their belongings on the ground. The sun is almost overhead and there are no shadows, so it must have been sometime around midday. Perhaps the fool has stopped for a meal break. But we normally look for a shady spot to sit down and relax, so why would they have stopped in the full sunlight? The ties on the bag are loose, but the bag is still mainly closed, So perhaps whatever the fool needed wasn't in the bag. There must be more to this story. Perhaps the fool has travelled just a little further to the left out of our perspective. What we do know for sure is wherever the fool's gone, that's where the risk will be. The fool's bag is quite small and there's not much room for a large water container, perhaps just enough space for a cup or a flask. On a sunny day like this, the fool would get thirsty, so they stopped at the sound of running water, took the cup or flask from the bag to fill, and left the bag lying next to the staff. Are the fool's companions signalling a warning? The red tie of the bag companion crosses the staff at right angles and is flicking up and down to gain the fool's attention and signal stop. The grasshopper, who has registered the sound of a waterfall over a slippery precipice, is heading away in the opposite direction to guide the fool away from a dangerous risk. Has this fool heeded the warning and is now standing just off scene, deciding which risk is worse, which risk can be mitigated, choosing how to proceed? It actually doesn't matter what the unseen risk is. The important point is that the fool has stopped to consider which action to take. In this storyline, the companion guides have done a good job. What the fool decides to do next is where the adventure continues. For now, exit stage right. Another possibility is that the human fool has ended their adventure. The abandoned staff and bag are the only evidence that something has happened. The size of the staff in relation to the grasshopper suggests that the fool is small, so perhaps the fool is just a child. Like every kid who goes outside to play in the garden, the dress-ups of a peg bag and a stick can turn a solitary child's game into an imaginary world filled with magic where everything in the garden plays a part in the fantasy. The grasshopper might have been a hero forced to walk the plank into the sea of grass. The staff could have been a huge shark raising its head to chomp the grasshopper, while the giant red octopus wrestled the shark under the water, so the grasshopper could leap like Superman and make a clean getaway. The risk to our child fool is being called inside to wash their hands for lunch in a real world where no one cares or has time to listen to a rambling fantasy and the fate of a companion grasshopper. So why on earth would the fool want to go back into the house, leaving the magic behind? Every child grows up and risks becoming the parent that calls our kids in for lunch and is mostly interested in the missing peg bag and who left the stick on the lawn that make-believe stories about a grasshopper. The risk we all face is the loss of innocence, authenticity, creativity and disconnection from our animal and spirit companions who are still there but aren't relevant anymore. We risk losing touch with spirituality in a world where the pegs are only for hanging out the washing, sticks are for staking out the tomatoes, animals are pets if they're lucky, and spirit is something we find on Sundays, all shaken and stirred in a glass. We risk reducing sweet memories of magical adventures to folly and a fool's paradise. Sound familiar? Perhaps even a little depressing? But that's not the point of this story. First of all, the sun's out just as it was when we were kids, and we still love summer. We can still play in the garden, and there are still sharks, octopuses, grasshoppers, warm grass, and adventures. The red tie of the peg bag still waves at us to come and play. There are still risks to be taken. The grasshopper is ready to guide us. There are still warnings to be heeded. While we can't physically leap or fly into the future, we can still adventure forward, whatever uncertainties the future might hold. Perhaps, if we let our inner child fall out, we can embrace it with optimism and joy and set out on a new adventure that's fit for humans, fit for spirit, and fit for purpose. Let's take this fool's journey together. That last story felt almost like an ending, but the Animal Totem Tarot deck's Fool card still held some secrets and a fifth story. The deeper I delved into this Fool card, the more I was convinced the Fool is somehow disguised in the artwork. I've already told the story of the Fool as a grasshopper, but I wasn't convinced. I've told the stories with the Fool gone or off frame and out of our perspective, but none of these seemed entirely sufficient. The Fool card is all about the Fool, so having them missing just doesn't make sense. The Fool had to be present, but I didn't know where to look. I went back to considering the red bag tie that's lying loosely across the staff, flicking up and down as though caught in a breeze, or wriggling like a snake, or waving goodbye to the grasshopper as it heads away somewhere, or even signalling stop like a traffic sign. Of course, the possibility that the red tie and bag is the Fool crossed my mind, but the risk it faced was really only disconnection from the staff. So that turned into a quirky red herring that went the way of the others. Nope, the Fool was somewhere else. The message of the stop sign's instruction was that I needed to stop and look both ways before continuing. The bag is mostly closed, but it's not securely tied, so there's a small gap. This new possibility showed me that the Fool has stopped, carefully laid the staff and bag down on the ground before gently loosening the tie and lying down on the grass to watch and listen. The Fool is a part of the scene, and that we're looking through the Fool's eyes. The Fool isn't off scene and out of perspective. This is the Fool's perspective. The grasshopper is the spirit companion, which the Fool has carried all the way in the bag for a reason, to set it free. The grasshopper has climbed onto the staff, chosen where it wants to go, and in a flash of blue eyelight it will be gone. It's up to the Fool to decide whether to stand up and follow, or to stay lying there in the grass, or to pick up the staff and bag and carry on without listening to the grasshopper's advice. If you love your spirit, then carry it with you always, but always be prepared to set it free. Listen to your inner voice, watch where spirit goes, and consider the guidance. One card, 5 very different stories and 5 very different Fools. We had a traditional Fool represented by a grasshopper, taking a leap of faith and launching into a new adventure. We had a dark tale of mankind's folly and the risk of thinking our way to extinction. We had a Fool who had heeded the guidance of companions and now contemplated the next move, the first step in a different direction. We had the child Fool of lost innocence and a companion urging us to find that inner child Fool and begin a new adventure. And my final story of taking the time to watch where spirit leads, listen to our inner voice and consider guidance before acting. So that's a wrap for episode 9 of Snapshots of the Fool, except it isn't the end. This little journey into the Animal Totem Tarot took me even deeper than the stories I've shared today, and as always, I had talked with a tarot for guidance. I had a fairly profound experience around that, so Dr. T and I decided to make another vlog about the process. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel and return to watch a follow-up, one more Fool and a story behind the stories. Thank you.